An 84-year-old employee is currently ghosting the office for 43 days, casting 0 votes, and ignoring every single direct communication from the employer, all while quietly tashing a taxpayer-funded paycheck. That is the literal situation unfolding in Kentucky. This deep dive pulls from a WLKY dispatch detailing the lineup for the 146th St. Jerome Fancy Farm Picnic, alongside an NBC News investigation into Governor Andy Beshear's formal ultimatum to Senator Mitch McConnell. We are tracking how one solitary medical absence completely short-circuits an entire state's political machine and exposes the truly bizarre mechanics of congressional replacement. Governor Beshear, a Democrat, sent formal letters to McConnell and Senate Majority Leader John Thune demanding that McConnell either verbally prove his capacity to serve or resign his seat entirely.
Threatening to demand a formal Senate investigation forces Thune into a highly uncomfortable public trap. The timeline drives this entire escalation. McConnell fell in Washington, D.C. on June 14th. His office erected a total firewall around his condition for nearly a month, keeping the press and rival politicians entirely locked out.
Sending a written update 28 days late barely qualifies as an update, you know? You have to ground that macro data of 0 official activities in 43 days into something tangible. Sending 43 consecutive unanswered text messages to someone holding your life savings, only to finally get a cryptic photo of them standing in a generic hallway in return, induces a very specific kind of panic.
You're left entirely in the dark while someone else controls your assets.
The constituents of Kentucky are experiencing that literal blackout. Their representative in the highest legislative body simply vanished. Beshear pointed out the stark math in his letter. In those 43 days, McConnell offered his constituents 2 solitary photographs alongside a highly manicured written statement.
Beshear directly attacked the credibility of the attending physician's statement on July 12. He noted it completely failed to address the core requirements of the job. The medical update conspicuously avoided confirming whether McConnell can speak or if he can, physically carry out his duties as a U.S. Senator. It only disclosed he was briefly unconscious before being transferred to a rehabilitation facility for mild pneumonia treatment.
Being transferred to a rehabilitation facility for mild pneumonia raises entirely new questions about the severity of the initial fall. Any intern can draft a press release and post a photograph. A sitting senator must actually debate on the floor and negotiate legislation. Releasing 2 photos functions like a bare minimum hostage proof of life drop. They intentionally obscure the situation. When a politician's staff releases a still image instead of a video, they are making a sort of calculated risk management decision.
They determined that showing him moving or speaking carried significantly more political risk than the massive backlash caused by the silence. Forcing one of Kentucky's 2 U.S. senators to verbally communicate with the public represents the absolute floor of Democratic accountability. Beshear seized on that transparency void in his press conference on Tuesday. Rampant speculation across social media evaporates the second McConnell steps in front of a microphone and speaks.
The timing feels incredibly calculated on the governor's part, though. Is Beshear genuinely losing sleep over constituent representation, or is he capitalizing on a moment of physical weakness to force a special election before the Republican machine can fully coronate a successor? He is framing this as a standard HR dispute. If a bank teller stops showing up to work and their spouse emails the manager 28 days later saying they are resting comfortably, the bank hires a new teller that afternoon.
Proving you possess the physical capacity to do the job you were hired to do is the most basic employment standard. Governor Beshear warned Senator Thune directly that if McConnell refuses to address the public, he fully expects Thune to initiate an investigation to see if replacement is warranted.
We need to examine the structural reality of what happens if McConnell actually is forced out. In most states, the governor simply points a finger and names a temporary replacement to flip the balance of power in Washington overnight. Kentucky operates under a completely different legal framework. State law dictates that a special election must be held to replace a U.S. senator. Explain to me how a state intentionally strips its own governor of that appointment power.
Legislatures rewrite succession laws, specifically to prevent the opposing party from gaining an unearned Senate seat. The Kentucky legislature basically changed the rules to ensure a Democratic governor could never handpick a Democratic successor to fill a sudden vacancy. Beshear cannot simply appoint an ally to flip the chamber. The law forces a special election, throwing the decision back to the voters.
That legal mechanism guarantees a massive, highly disruptive political scramble the moment a seat opens up. McConnell already announced his intention to retire at the end of his current term in 2026. The race to fill that seat is already in motion. Representative Andy Barr recently won the Republican primary to succeed McConnell and is heavily favored to win the general election in what is currently a very red state. The mechanics of a forced resignation would accelerate that timeline drastically.
The party would face a chaotic sprint instead of a controlled handoff in 2 years. Senator Thune washed his hands of the entire conflict, telling NBC News that he saw the governor's letter, but insisted the issue is strictly between Senator McConnell and the people of Kentucky.
Explain to me why the Senate Majority Leader is treating a massive federal balance of power issue like a localized zoning dispute.
Deflecting responsibility to the state level allows Thune to avoid taking a public stance on the health of his own party's defining figure. Acknowledging the governor's authority validates the premise that McConnell is unfit to serve. Thune claimed he was unsure what the governor's prerogatives even are in this case. Pushing the responsibility away minimizes the national story and protects the institutional stability of the Senate.
Any investigation initiated by leadership would trigger intense infighting within his own ranks. The strategy is pure political survival. By ignoring the letter, Thune forces Beshear to shout into the void. Senator Rand Paul took a much more aggressive approach. He dismissed Beshear's ultimatum entirely, calling it a desperate campaign ploy by the governor to look relevant.
Paul argued that elderly senators from both parties face health issues. He heavily criticized Beshear for putting out inflammatory statements just to inject himself into the news cycle.
The political irony there is staggering. Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell famously have a very frosty relationship. They represent entirely different wings of the party and are definitely not close allies. Yet Paul rushed to McConnell's defense.
Paul rushed to McConnell's defense solely to attack Beshear. Governor Beshear is widely considered a potential 2028 presidential candidate. Paul used the controversy over McConnell's health as a convenient weapon to strike at a rising Democratic figure in his own state. The defense of McConnell served merely as a vehicle for attacking a future rival.
Paul recognizes that Beshear is attempting to position himself as a champion of transparency. By dismissing the governor as an opportunist, Paul attempts to neutralize that narrative before it gains national traction. All of this legal maneuvering and succession planning physically converges on one specific location. The 146th annual St. Jerome Fancy Farm Picnic kicks off August 1st at 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time.
For anyone outside the region, you have to understand this event is Kentucky's most closely watched political tradition. It brings together candidates and elected officials for aggressive campaigning and highly publicized political debate just before the upcoming elections. Politicians stand on a wooden stage in the sweltering heat while thousands of partisans scream and heckle them relentlessly.
Both Governor Beshear and Senator McConnell formally declined to attend this year. The two central figures driving the biggest political crisis in the state opted out of the defining political event of the year. Their absence creates a massive physical vacuum at an event designed specifically for political confrontation.
McConnell released a statement reminiscing about his history with the picnic, talking about attending for the first time 42 years ago. He described Fancy Farm back then as a pretty lonely place to be a Republican, contrasting that with today by calling Western Kentucky a conservative Republican sea of red. He then lamented that he will miss feasting on the pork and mutton this year.
Writing a nostalgic letter about barbecue while your office stonewalls the press about your medical condition functions as this sort of highly effective misdirection tactic.
The race to succeed McConnell is now entirely dominating the schedule. With the current senator absent, the candidates vying for his seat take center stage. Representative Andy Beshear and former State Representative Charles Booker both confirmed they will participate in the Senate candidates portion of the program. They are stepping into the void left by McConnell to actively audition for his power.
Beshear needs to project stability and inevitability. Booker aims to capitalize on the chaos to energize the Democratic base. The down-ballot races are getting intensely competitive as well. The first congressional district race features Republican Representative James Comer and Democratic candidate John Drew Williams. Organizers are determining their speaking order by a literal coin flip.
Tying the optical advantage of a congressional debate to a piece of metal flipping in the air highlights the raw, unfiltered nature of this event. You have this massive physical gathering happening while the main combatants stay home.
The Fancy Farm Picnic is functioning like a chaotic family reunion where the patriarch and the rival uncle both skip town, leaving the kids to publicly brawl over the inheritance in front of the neighbors while slipping coins to see who swings first.
A tradition built entirely on face-to-face political combat is now overshadowed by a proxy war of press releases and medical speculation. The physical absence of the state's most powerful leaders highlights the strange reality of modern political warfare. They are fighting for control of the narrative from behind closed doors, leaving their surrogates to face the screaming crowds.
The attendee list is packed with officials scrambling to fill the vacuum and raise their own profiles. Senator Rand Paul confirmed his attendance, gladly taking the stage to absorb the spotlight McConnell left behind. Democratic gubernatorial candidate and current Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman will be there representing the Beshear administration. Rocky Adkins, who served as Governor Beshear's senior advisor, is also on the schedule. They are all stepping up to the microphones to wage a proxy war on behalf of the two men actively hiding from the cameras.
The Republican side is fielding a massive roster of statewide officials. Attorney General Russell Coleman, State Auditor Allison Ball, State Treasurer Mark Metcalf, and Secretary of State Michael Adams all signaled they plan to attend. Agriculture Commissioner Jonathan Schell confirmed he will be there as well.
Every ambitious politician in the state recognizes the rare opportunity created by this power vacuum. They are showing up to prove their viability to the party base. The sheer volume of politicians showing up only amplifies the silence of the two men who refuse to go. We are watching a political system completely paralyzed by medical secrecy and a looming election season, all taking place at a picnic missing its biggest figures.
Representative democracy fundamentally fractures when a politician's optical survival completely overrides their physical presence.